Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you here in this Bússola Tech debate. We're going to discuss the applications of artificial intelligence in legislative activities. This is a very interesting topic that we came across during our last discussion with Ludovic a few months ago, which gave us the idea to promote this discussion and to present outstanding features of colleagues in this area in different parliaments. We do understand that artificial intelligence is a very broad term, and we want to deep dive on specific applications that have impact on the ground in the reality of legislatures, helping internal users such as staff, members of parliament, to get more and better insights for the lawmaking process and to the oversight process, as well as citizens, civil society organizations, and the private sector trying to get the better view, the better perspective on what is happening in the legislative and trying to better understand their institution. Today, we have a debate where Ludovic Delepiné from the European Parliament will start with a presentation from a case. They are applying artificial intelligence in the European Union. And afterwards, colleagues from other parliaments and from the private sector will also make brief presentations and comments to what Ludovic just shared and have a small dialogue dynamic. So I'd like to introduce our colleagues and friends here today. Ludovic Delepiné, as I mentioned to you, is from the European Parliament. We also have Alisson Bruno de Queiroz from the Brazilian Senate House. We have Fotios Fitsilis from the Hellenic Parliament and from the Hellenic OCR team. Jonathan Ruckert from NovaWorks in Australia, and Robin Treistman from the Knesset in Israel. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you today. Ludovic, you have the floor. 15 to 20 minutes. Feel free to make your presentation and be most welcome.
Let's dive a little bit in one of the domains of application of artificial intelligence in a parliament, which is related to historical archives. And I could have called that Archive 62, and I will just explain you at the end why Archive 62. Why going to apply this type of algorithm or this approach in the archives? If you can go to next slide, you will discover that we have, in fact, at the domain of the archives, two domains of responsibilities. The first one is a regulatory framework, and that's the case of most of the parliament in the world. In the context of the European Parliament, there's one regulatory framework which is more focused than the other one, which is what we call the regulation 35483, which is a regulation from the Council that defines when documents should be transferred to the archives of the European Parliament to be kept and then open to the public. So that's the first domain, which is the regulatory approach. And the second one, this is a democratic continuity. And this is sometimes something that we do not necessarily think about. Archives and records are the tools by which parliaments can make themselves accountable and demonstrate their democratic credentials. Well-managed archives and records are the means by which citizens can understand to who, when, where, how, and why of parliament actions. And it's extremely important. Many activities we have to do in the archives are answering questions from the civil society. And I will just pick two questions that we received. One is, for instance, what did Parliament to combat the illicit trade in cultural property in Europe prior to 1964? That's a real question. And what actions took the European Parliament regarding North Korea during the period from 1980 to 1999? So these are the kind of questions we have to answer. And if you don't have a set of records, a set of documents organized and searchable, it will be extremely complicated to answer to this kind of question, because maintaining archives is not just done for the fun of keeping documents for history, but it's just also to provide means, tools, facts that historians or researchers can base on in order to interpret the past, to know how we came to the situation of today and to foresee the one of tomorrow. So if we can go to next slide, you will just have a rough idea of the documents that we store in the European Parliament. We have an archive management system, which is a digital tool that contains currently around 5 million archive records since 1952. And on top of these ones, we have sometimes physical documents, sometimes digital-born documents that we still have to process. On one side, we have around 3 kilometers of physical material in the archive of the Parliament, meaning papers that we still have to process, and so close to 1 terabyte of digital materials that we still have to process. And one of the specificities of the institution, of the European institutions, is that we have a permanent storage, permanent preservation of our documents, but once they are more than 30 years, we are invited to send them to the historical archives of the European Union, which is located in Florence. So all institutions transfer the archives in Florence. And we have there a deposit of 1.6 kilometers. So these values may seem quite high for you, but in terms of digitalization, if you make a comparison between 5 million records on one side and 3 kilometers of archives, keep in mind that other institutions, such as, for instance, the European Commission, has around 140 kilometers of physical archives, and the Council is around 40 kilometers of archives. So just to give you a rough idea and the effort that we are putting in the processing and digitalization of our documents. If we can move to the next slide, you will then discover which are the main activities that we launch in the domain of artificial intelligence. Sometimes not directly related to AI, but I will explain why. The first thing we did was to implement a chatbot. So we use NLP facilities, so natural language processing facilities, to create a kind of new version from frequently asked questions. So instead of receiving mails and having a list of frequently asked questions, we implemented a chatbot that enables to query the archive domain by having a better understanding of the concepts that we are doing in the archives or searching for documents. The second one, which is not related to AI, but still, let's say, an advanced use on some graphical components to search into large data sets, we work on data visualization. We started to control the archive management system 2 years ago to check the consistency of our data. And we started in 1957, which is the first document we have. And right now we have control and provided an access to citizens to 330,000 documents. So all documents from 1957 to 1979. Providing an access and easy ways to search in such a huge data set is something not that much easy, and we try to make use of some visualization tools I will introduce just after. Another domain that we went on is the automatic summarization. We have documents sometimes which are long, and when you want to have an overview of a set of documents, you may not have necessarily time to go through all the documents extensively. So you appreciate sometimes to have a kind of summary of the documents and not to be obliged to read it extensively. So what we developed is a system by which you can put as an entry, a text, and that will reduce to a custom value a certain percentage of the initial size of the text in something like 100 languages. And we applied it to documents which are oral interventions. We may enter into the detail later on with the questions, why oral interventions? Because when you are making automatic summarization, in our context, we took summarization by extraction, meaning that we do not rewrite, we do not paraphrase the initial text, we extract the most meaningful sentences from the text, and then we provide them as a summary. So in this context, you need to have a document which is consistent for instance, not a mix of several documents by which you could have issues for the consistency of the summary. So in this context, we decided to use oral intervention, which is one intervention from one person. And when the intervention is long in this context, we have a summary. And the last one, which is the one that we are currently developing, and we hope to put live for citizens in a couple of weeks, which is related to topic modeling and document classification. Of course, that's a huge issue when you have this type of approach to identify clusters of documents or the topics which are pertinent for a set of documents. When we have 50,000 documents, trying to isolate the one which are only referring to the topic you are interested in could be quite challenging. So if you are looking for something related to transportation or climate change, well, we may have some facilities to isolate the documents having these topics and the one which are similar to this one. And this is currently what we're investigating. For a matter of consistency, again, we applied this one as parliamentary questions. So this is the first data set test that we are using. Again, it's extremely consistent. So it's not any kind of document that we are taking and we're trying to classify. We try to really provide an advanced value by delivering something pertinent for one question, not crawling a full data set of all documents we have and trying to identify which one could be used. So if you can move to next slide. You just have the presentation of the chatbot and see how it relates. It will be available for citizens in next weeks. Now it's already available on the intranet for the archives for now 6 or 7 months. And it's just a simple softbot by which we have 3 functionalities. The first one is to enable to search rapidly for sections which are predefined. The second one to explain concepts used in the archives. And the third one, which is a way to find a document by a kind of trade of questions by which we reduce the number of possible documents related to your request by crawling inside the organization of the Parliament. In this context, we are using ChatLayer, which is a product from the market. All documents are stored on Amazon Web Services, so it's an AWS S3 bucket that is used as storage. Why is it possible to use this type of storage? Because we are disseminating public documents. So these are not the original documents. These are public documents. So in this case, it's fully possible to use this type of storage services. So that's the first one we developed. And if we go to the next slide, you will see the way that we decided to implement data visualization. So there you see that we introduce 300,000 documents by providing a set of searchable facilities. You can search for items in the title, you can search for types of documents. And if you activate the dashboard, so please, if you can click on the dashboard to make it more live, then you will see that all these graphical components are interrelated. So if you are looking, for instance, for the intervention from Mr. Schumann, you can look for the title, and inside the title, try to filter. So you, well, this is a live system that currently is demonstrated, the one which is accessible to any citizen. And inside the title, if you have the possibility to type Schumann, for instance, which is the name of the first president of the Common Assembly, and then you search for document, you retrieve them all, and you will have automatically a realignment of all series that correspond, all the documents that correspond to your search. You can see in which languages are available. You can see that the one we are keeping there are oral intervention. You've got the years, and at the end of the page, you've got a table. And inside this table, by clicking on the document that you're interested in, you will open directly the original file, which is stored from inside the archives and accessible to any citizen. So this is the original document. So it's pretty straightforward and relatively easy to use. As we mentioned before, we have the case of the oral intervention. So for the oral intervention, we provided an automatic summary. And if you could please select in the types for future use, not PDF, but the type which is related. Yes, the last one. Thank you. There we, by removing Schumann, by clearing the value for the title. So if you can reset the value for the title. So the resetting is on the 3 dots just below. Yeah, thank you very much. And there we are selecting only oral intervention because this is a subset of data that we apply the automatic summarization, and we choose the year 1959, for instance, in order to find a document from this year. That should be really at the bottom for 1959. So if you open one of the documents from this year, you will see that with this option, the document is automatically authorized. We extract the content, we summarize the content, and then we provide the results. So I think that the year that was chosen is not 1959, which is the year for which we implemented this function. Yes, if you go to year and visualization tool, yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. And if you click on any of the lines, in this case, this is a data set we use in order to show the opportunity to use the automatic summary. So there you see that you have this document that has automatically been extracted in terms of content by authorization. We are using Tesseract for the authorization, and then we are making the summary to 20% of the size resulting from the original document. And the algorithm that we are using for this summary is produced by the MIT, and it's Summa NLP that we use in this context. So if you come back to the presentation, thank you. So this facility is the one that we implemented, and we will isolate it from the visualization tool to provide an access only to the family of documents which has been implemented for the automatic summarization. If you can go to next slide, you'll see that while we developed a system for automatic summarization, we exposed it also. So it's a technical service we're using for our documents, but we also decided to expose it to citizens because you can introduce any kind of docx, PDF, or TXT document, and then by defining the values that you would like to have the reduction of the document, you can submit it, and then you will have the result. So we expose this service with a basic graphical user interface compared to which is the same technical service we are using for the oral intervention. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this one corresponds to the modelization we are doing for topic modeling and document classification. So what we created is to define a normalized corpus, and that's why we took the parliamentary question, because they are very homogeneous in time. These are not different documents that will differ in their structure or in their purpose in time. So it's a coherent set of documents. Again, all these documents are stored on the S3 bucket that I mentioned before, so that it's possible for us to use it and then to provide it for citizens without any issues. And what we are doing is that similarly to the oral intervention, as we have just demonstrated before, we are extracting the content from the PDF document by using Tesseract, and then we use Facey to normalize and create LEMs. So we have a set of post-processing actions that we are using to obtain at the end, a kind of vector that represents the documents by having isolated the words which are the more meaningful for the content of the document. And then when we want to compare the documents, we try to find which one are the closest one to the others. We use Gensin for similarity detection, and mainly what is called the algorithm TF-IDF, which is the one we use. And for the topic modeling, we use latent Dirichlet allocation, so LDAT algorithm. So this is what you are currently doing. You see that based on our documents, we isolated a certain number of clusters that you have on the right, and the bigger the size of the circle is, the biggest number of documents it contains. And on the right, you see that you have the different topics which are identified inside this cluster by occurrences, the one being in red being the one that you will find the most inside this topic. And there we have the top 30, and we'll use the top 5 to identify which are the fifth topic, which are the more important for this category. Then, of course, you see that in these bubbles, you've got number 1, which is displayed. But if you, the far the circles are, the more discriminant they are, meaning that if there's no overlap, you will have no topics inside that will interrelate from one class to another one. So that's what we are currently developing in a proof of concept, and is about to be ended, because this is the real case we obtained on the first data set with a trained model. So it's an unsupervised trained model that we use for the classification of the parliamentary questions. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So all these tools and facilities are available from the archives website from the Parliament, which is historical archives.europal.europa.eu, which is our website. And on this site, you will find an access to this dashboard and a set of information related to our documents. If you can go to the next slide, please, then we'll see what more or less are the lessons learned that we had from these steps. The first one is about quality control. Whatever you want to do with AI and data is depending on the quality of the data. There's no doubt of that. It's well known. It's no rocket science is what I'm saying. But really, this is one of the most important factors to focus on. We spend almost 2 years to control the 300,000 documents one by one, to check that each metadata is correct, and to check that the documents can be accessed and of a sufficient quality. And when we performed this quality control, we found that we had 20% of anomalies, which is enormous. We had 20% of anomalies on these documents. The second one is we use a cloud platform for public data. And why did we do that? Because we have public documents. So these are documents for more than 30 years. They do not contain any personal data, so we can expose them and we can manipulate them in the interest of the citizen. The third point is a use case approach per document type. As you have seen, when we developed the summarization by extraction, we did it on the oral interventions. For instance, we did not do it on reports. So why not doing it on reports? Because very often reports already contains a summary. So you will not summarize a document that contains a summary. And this is the same thing for studies. Very often studies starts with the first page, which is the summary. So in this context, it would be summary extraction, but not summarization, which would be completely useless. So this type of algorithm could be a matter of interest, but you clearly have to identify which family, which document types could be interesting for this approach. And in the case of summarization, we took oral intervention. It's one person, and this is a flow speech of the person which is used, and very often quite consistent. And for the one which is related to topic modeling, we took parliamentary questions, because again, across time, and our purpose is to go from 97 until 1979 with the one that we have right now, but to extend them later on. to have a valuable approach, having a good trust in the results which are obtained in the application of the algorithm. And the last one, which is to be able to promote continuous development and to have short cycles of providing facilities. As you have seen, the one which is a proof of concept that we're currently doing is already starts to be shown to some colleagues for testing. And the one that we implemented for summarization was included in the first tab for the document access. In a couple of weeks, we will extract this function, create a new dashboard that will only contain documents that can be summarized. So we provide the facility, we test the facility, and then we evolve and we make more consistent in time the use and user experience related to this function. It enables us in the same time to be able to challenge vendor or solutions or to benefit from open source algorithm, because while we have short cycle of development, we can go back with the results and obtain additional views from the vendors or to benefit from the latest version of the algorithm that we are using. So if we can go to the last slide, and we'll conclude on that. Why did I mention that we could have called that archive 62? Because 62 is the age of the person who developed that. Very often people think that artificial intelligence is something related to geek or to young people which are extremely new on the market, and this is completely wrong. Please trust me, this is wrong. AI innovation is absolutely not a matter of age, it's a matter of mindset. And this person who is my responsible for digitalization, his name is Marco Amabilino, is a wonderful person. He's close to retirement, but we push him a little bit more to benefit from his mental health, and is extremely oriented on innovation, and is implementing all these AI algorithms extremely easily. So that's also one of the lessons learned. I didn't write it in these slides, but please do not consider that this field of investigation has to be done by young geeks. It can be done by anybody as soon as you have a mind which is oriented to innovation as a general principle. Thank you very much. And I leave the floor for the panel.
Thank you so much, Ludovic, for such an insightful presentation. And the first time I heard about this project in the EU Parliament, it truly amazed me to see how parliaments are evolving and are using artificial intelligence for their benefit, and to, as I mentioned in my introduction, to get more insights and to make use of past legal information to help in present and future matters. I will not extend myself here. I will focus on our next step in our debate today. Just to explain to the colleagues here, we are going to divide our discussions in 3 different dimensions. The first dimension on data governance with Fotios, Fitsilis, and with Jonathan Ruckert. The second dimension with user interface and user experience with Robin Treistman. And the last dimension with the citizen engagement, how citizens can use this information for their benefit. Without further ado, Fotios, please feel free to use the floor. You have 10 minutes for a brief presentation and for your comments, followed by Ludovic's comments, and you can have a short conversation afterwards. Please feel free to use the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Fotios Fitsilis from the Hellenic Parliament. Where do we start here, following Ludovic's excellent presentation? I have collected a few points based on which I will elaborate upon and try to interrelate with our own actions in and around the Hellenic Parliament. First of all, Ludovic said right at the beginning that AI is a technology, or several technologies if you wish, but ultimately they rely on data. So if you don't have data, or if you don't have sufficiently cleaned useful data, then you will get out unexpected results and maybe wrong results. So this is what we learned also during our exposure to this technological environment and to this whole digitalization exercise we did in the Hellenic Parliament, that without investing sufficient amount of time and efforts in cleaning and validating your parliamentary data, there's no point starting seriously with applying really new tools and services, because you know the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. If you feed the machines, the algorithms, if you isolate the software, if you feed them with wrongful or results that are maybe discriminative or faulty in different types and dimensions, you cannot expect to have something meaningful out of it. And maybe you have also read the old novel Per Hitchhike in the Galaxies, and where you feed the computer with a question and you get a very complicated question, and you get out the number 42 after 10,000 of years of calculations. So this is where I start. Meaningful data. Let's combine now this notion with what we do in the Greek Parliament. Unlike the European institution, the European Parliament, the Greek Parliament is a rather, in terms of volume and size, it's a rather medium-sized parliament. And this also applies not only to MPs and the amount of experts or scientists it has, it also applies to the resources we have at our disposal. When we started dealing with data, and I will continue with a discussion of AI applications, we stepped upon an issue there. So how do you tackle this really resource-intensive matter, meaning how do you digitize material from physical paper to structured and maybe standardized data? How do you do that? And how do you do that when particularly the leadership is not that highly sensitive about this, not ignorant, maybe it's just a low priority. So how do you tackle this? So we thought very hard about this maybe 5 to 6 years ago, and we said, okay, we are researchers, we are parliamentary researchers, so we need to provide solutions. We cannot simply say, okay, we don't have funding, so we just sit around and wait till something appears in the horizon. That would be maybe an approach, but it would delay things in an area of in a research area that is moving rapidly forward. So what we did is we created a research initiative, as Luís mentioned, and Luís is a member of this initiative with his Bússola Tech vendor company. We call it the Hellenic OCR team, and you see here a component of it is OCR, which is optical character recognition. So we studied, we went to this problem, we tackled this problem right at the beginning, and we saw that in order to have data, to gather them, archive them, structure them, and ultimately analyze them and apply algorithms on them, you need to digitize them. So we studied several technologies. We used Tesseract. We used commercial products like ABI Fine Reader and others. And after we were confident that the results we got were good enough to work with, we defined a very structured approach to digitalization that we have also published several times and announced in conferences. that also includes a validation, a very resource-intensive validation step. So since this is Parliament, well, it was not enough to have, let's say, 98% or 99% character correctness after the OCR step. We needed to have this remaining 1% also correct. You cannot simply publish documents that are 99% accurate. That's, yeah, that might be good enough for science, but not for the public. We needed to have 100% correct versions of what was in our archives. And since this remaining 1% was necessary to be done by humans, we trained a team, a decentralized team of several dozens of private persons, not related to the Parliament, volunteers that started to work with our data and cleaning our data in a very well-defined manner. Of course, there were also quality control steps and so on, so that at the end, we were pretty confident that the end result was 100% matching the original document in paper, parliamentary document in paper. So, but this is, let's say, old story. This was done, this was developed a few years ago, and now we have at our disposal a really huge set of documents that, by the way, Ludovic, we also started with parliamentary control documents, because exactly of what you have said, they're well defined, they have a similar structure, they have repeated features that are changing very seldom in time. So we were confident that this material is a very good starting point to use as a pilot, and we were right with that at the end. So where are we now? This is, as said, old story. At the moment, we said, okay, now we have data. We have reliable data where we can apply algorithms. So which algorithms? And what we did, and allow me, Luís, maybe a couple of minutes more to elaborate on our AI interventions here, or maybe research activities. Of course, we could go there and start with summarization, tokenization, and all these standard algorithms that are not really new. They're around for several years. Their application is maybe new, and the parliamentary workspace is new for them. So we thought, we said the following: okay, we won't take these decisions on our own. Ultimately, we're researchers. I mean, we didn't want to take this role as well. So we made an international study first, and then we made a workshop internally. In the international study that has been published in 2021 in April, so a year ago, we tried to figure out which technologies are relevant, which emerging technologies are relevant, because as Ludovic said already, it's not all about AI. There are several other technologies that may be useful. Maybe people collectively think of them as AI, but sometimes it's not. So data visualization is not AI, it's data visualization, something different. So we defined a narrow set of technologies, AI and non-AI related, that might be relevant for Parliament. And as said, this was an international study. And okay, we came up with a set of technologies, and we have discussed them a little bit. And we thought that they are, okay, this is a good starting point for our Parliament, or maybe other parliaments to start with. But there was something missing. The localization of the problem was missing. So we did an expert survey. So this is the the approach, an expert survey, and we discussed with a few dozens of experts, parliamentary experts across the globe. Does this say anything about our parliament, the Greek parliament? No. It indicates some directions, but it doesn't say anything about our parliament. So we did the following. We did last year, almost a year ago, we did a workshop internally in the parliament with 14 people, 14 parliamentary employees and experts from, if I recall correctly, 9 to 10 different departments. And we discussed them, and we are about to publish these results of the workshop. We figured out what our parliament, or through the experts that work in them, would like to work with, what kind of AI-based technologies they would like to work. And we're at the point of summarizing that and publishing this and analyzing this, so that we have a starting point again for our own parliament to start with the design and application of AI technologies. So remember, we have the data. Now we figure out what technologies we would like to apply, and we can combine these two in order to go into the next step, which is the actual building of artificial intelligence Parl tech, as we say, parliamentary technology. And I would like to close with, and kindly excuse the lengthier presentation. I would like to call upon the international community and the parliaments that are hearing to us right now. We have the ability and the tools to analyze, to make such workshops also in other parliaments, to analyze other parliaments' views on AI. So if anybody, any parliament would like to study our approach, as said, it will be available in a couple of months as a published paper, and would like to study its internal views on the use of AI, we could use our method. We could use our workshop technique and our analysis, our ex post analysis of experts' views to produce documents and guidelines and dimensions for AI application that your parliaments could find it very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your opening remarks. Ludovic, would you like to make brief comments in the time of 5 minutes?
Maybe 2 points I will reinforce. Again, sometimes you are opening open doors, but it's good to remind that they were open. Garbage in, garbage out. So since I started AT on the last century, this is something that we heard very often. It is still very true. If you put garbage in the system, what you will open in the end is garbage. It will not manage it to be correctly organized, structure, and useful for you. The quality of data is really key. So if you want to have a document dissemination system, that's one thing. You may have metadata and provide documents. If you want to be able to start to manipulate the content of this data or content of document to have more advanced search facilities or discovery of your content, in this case, you really need to have a good quality of documents or data, and then OCR will be a key activity to extract the content. In our case, we have documents starting from 1957. At this time, you can imagine that the number of computers was extremely low, and it was mainly or handwritten or typewritten. So it's typewritten, sometimes even the ink has gone inside the paper, so it's quite complex to extract. The quality of the paper sometimes was doubtful, and the quality of the authorization is something that we focused also a lot on. We have sometimes scans that were made many years after, by which the last letter of each sentences were missing because it was on the side. The orientation, well, it's not perfectly aligned to have a very nice A4 scans, or some documents where it's extremely difficult to recognize the sets that were used to write the words. So there's a huge difficulty to manipulate the content of this document, and that's why it was also mentioned that we decided to apply a certain set of algorithms to documents which are consistent enough in time, for which we have a good trust of quality in this document compared to the type of algorithm that will be applied to this one. And that's extremely important. We didn't start to make an authorization of all the documents. Sometimes we have handwritten and written documents that will be really hard to identify and to recognize the content. Or we have some notes with tables of 12, 15 columns in a table that is extremely complex to reorganize, to have sentences that you could manipulate. So there's a set of constraints on this type, and quality of scans is for us also something that is extremely important. A very good approach to share the way that you conducted the internal workshops and the opening to AI and new technologies. It's true that visualization is not considered in AI, but it's, as we will discuss it later on in user experience, it's something that is extremely important in terms of manipulation of the content, so searchability and discovery of content manipulated. But we are fully aligned with the presentation that was just made by our colleagues from the Hellenic Parliament.
Really appreciate the openness of Ludovic. This is the way to move forward, share experience, share also good and bad practice. So there's a lot that you can start wrong with a wrong foot, and if you can simply avoid some really huge mistakes, this is a huge advantage right in the beginning. Maybe just to share that we will publish our research for the first time, or we will announce it as a scientific publication at the Roxton workshop in Oxfordshire at the end of July this year, and then it will be available also at their website and through different repositories, I suppose. So, but anyway, you don't have to wait till we have announced it at that point. If anybody wants to have more insights on what we did and how we did it, so the methodology of data collection and analysis, I'm stand at your disposal for more information.
Data is key. If you take basic enterprise architecture diagram to describe how you are working with digital information on your organization, you have the digital workplace, digital solutions, you have reusable solutions, and then you have the data ecosystem. And this is something which is very hard to focus on because these systems are in place for a very long time, that we have very often performed in a decentralized manner, so there's no harmonization. So it's extremely complex to come back on this one. But really having a focus on data ecosystem and starting to identify a set of data that you could control and ensure the quality, and then moving to the other ones is one of the key success factors for addressing data and then AI use of this data.
Okay,
Hi, Louis.
you have 10 minutes to share your opening thoughts, so we can follow the same structure again for a discussion with Ludovic. Please feel free to use the floor.
Excellent, thank you very much, and appreciate everyone's time today. I'm going to just put up a bit of a presentation for everyone, and it's just a small presentation. Hopefully my technology will work. I'm not using artificial intelligence for this, I'm using my own brain power. So, so I just want to quickly go through and really about some of the foundations in terms of some of the things. So NovaWorks has been working with parliaments around the world for the last 15 to 20 years, and really highlighting the fact that there's been a huge shift in terms of the use of artificial intelligence and also other web-based and document management sort of technologies as well, from where it was even, say, 5 to 10 years ago. And what I'd like to sort of go through today is really about understanding, I've got a bit of an agenda, like just some simple dot points around what are some of the general challenges and foundational pieces which really need to be considered when we look at AI, and also what are some of the practical use cases of artificial intelligence too. And specifically around where we look at the parliamentary business side, and also the interactions with agencies or with other departments or with the citizens and other businesses as well. So it's not just necessarily around how Parliament uses AI, but it's also then how that actual information can be consumed by other interested parties too. So I just want to have a bit of a general overview in terms of what we look at the general challenges. And I think, you know, the highlight of a debate so far has been around data. Quality data is really key. And so, like, for example, one of the parliaments which we're working with at the moment is data back to the 1800s. And, you know, when we look at that information, it's all on, you know, pieces of paper which you can't actually touch with your hands. It's also got handwriting, you know, it's got scribbles all over the pages. It's got, you know, information absolutely everywhere. And then you've got the text in the middle. So you might actually find that part of our debates have been actually crossed out and you've got corrections and a whole range of other things. And also what I find really interesting when we look at this as well, when we look at really old data as well, and in terms of that sort of artificial intelligence side of things, is that language has actually evolved over the last 150 and 200 years too. So the way which data is actually analysed in the 1800s is actually different to the 1900s, to the 1940s, to the 1950s, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's quite interesting when you look at all of those sort of learnings around that. And one of the other things around AI is that really it needs to be considered in conjunction with what I say some of the following areas. So fairness. So fairness is actually really important when we look at artificial intelligence. So fairness is actually, when you look at algorithms or anything like that, algorithms can actually have a bias. So a bias can actually be introduced by AI in terms of some of these sort of things. So you need to have procedures, and you need to have, you know, thought in terms of how, you know, if you're using artificial intelligence over a long period of time or over a long period, that those algorithms which you're actually potentially using don't necessarily introduce bias, and they still remain fair and equitable to, say, both sides of a party. So you might have your government or your opposition, and you need to make sure as a governance approach that your algorithms and the use of AI is actually fair on all parties. Accountability is actually another really important part. So making sure that, you know, if Parliament or Congress or assemblies are actually using artificial intelligence, you know, it's about understanding they need to be accountable for that use as well as having the transparency. So, you know, do you say to your citizens that, you know, that there are proportions of this information, you know, which are actually being using artificial intelligence and our algorithms in some way? Like, is that actually a topic which actually needs to be considered as part of that particular approach? But also, you know, it's also understanding what do we need to approach for what I call the non-digital citizens too. And, you know, there are still a lot of people out there who will print out a form or, you know, and then, you know, write a lot of content in paper form and still submit it through to Parliament, et cetera. So you still have to work out how this sort of fits into what I call the non-digital citizen approach as well. So when we look at this, I've got a couple of different practical use cases which we've implemented for different parliaments around the world, and just understanding what AI can actually be used for with certain circumstances as well. You know, one of the biggest sort of areas which we get asked around is around time and cost savings and whatnot. You know, we've worked with some parliaments who are multilingual. So Some of them may speak English, some of them may speak French, but they have to produce transcripts in 2 different languages as an example. So artificial intelligence can really help from a translation point of view. And a lot of parliaments are now live streaming, as an example, or streaming content to the web. So when they're sitting, they're debating, and exactly what we're doing right now, they're actually streaming that to the internet. But that is data itself. So we can use AI to actually enable us to give a better service for citizens, as an example, who do not speak English. So one of the highlights which we do is that we do translation on the fly with the transcripts. So in the case of the content which has been shown or summarized by the European Parliament, as an example, if it isn't in German, as an example, as the content which was shown, if you wanted to show that in English, you just have to flick a button and that will automatically translate it to your native language, as an example. So by using that existing asset, there are really interesting ways you can actually then formulate a really good response to really enabling more transparency for parliaments as well around this particular process. There are other options available, and I know cost is one of the biggest ones, especially around like live captions, as an example. So I know in Australia, there's a mandate that all web streaming and all sort of broadcasting will have live captions by a set date, as an example. And there's always a cost associated with that. So if you can automatically generate what topics people are actually talking about, what captions are actually said, like during a live stream, then that's actually going to be quite important and empowering for people with accessibility issues or other things like that, where content that can be actually analyzed on the fly and giving real feedback to the actual citizens as they actually see it as well. Again, like handwritten recognition for old content is a really interesting one as well. So we can actually then look at, when we look at keyword analysis side of things. So we do keyword analysis to actually detect trends in legislation over time or content in terms of how is actually the whole ecosystem or the whole National Assembly actually evolving over a period of time. And where you look at the historical archives, as Ludovic was sort of saying, is that that's actually really important to understand where you've actually been and where you're actually going. And what are all the decisions and how are those decisions actually interlinked? And because of the amount of data which is actually there, it's physically impossible for a human to actually process all of that information. We're talking about terabytes or millions and millions of documents, and the amount of documents, which are actually there, AI can actually help put all those links and the dots together. Summarization of content is really important as well. We've got, for example, with parliaments where they do committees and they have submissions by the public to say, this is my thoughts on this particular topic, as an example. And, members of parliament have to review, say, 1,000 submissions, within a 2-week period. And so summarization of content can actually be really important to say, well, this is actually the same topic or the same trend is actually occurring between these 1,000 submissions, as an example. We can also do other things such as flagging keywords for moderation review as well. So, in the event that, a inappropriate bit of content actually gets submitted from the public to a parliament, we can actually automatically flag that information as well. So, there are a whole range of things and use cases when we look at artificial intelligence that can actually look at keywords and topics, linking and grouping all that information together in a really meaningful way. And it's sort of like what Ludovic was showing you on the screen, was saying that that's a really interesting data visualization aspect in terms of here are a number of documents. You can look at what topics were debated on those particular years as an example to say, actually, what are the trends And during the 1950s or 1960s, what were the actual highlights in terms of how that actually then evolved in terms of the way which actually the whole national sort of, system actually evolved from there. We also look at AI as being a transparency tool as well. Helping accountability, like flagging questions. So when questions are raised within Parliament, what happens if they get missed? Or, automatically linking answers. So if you're looking at committees or inquiries or other things like that, so where you've got witnesses or other areas, so you're actually enabling that transparency, and you're saying, well, actually, that is a question or that is an answer to a reply, and automatically linking all that information together to make sure that people are actually held accountable for that information that they're actually saying to Parliament as well. And also, I think the really other key thing is reaching a wider community. We're living in a multicultural society where, people don't necessarily speak the native language of our country. So, if you can reach a wider part of our community, then you can engage with your citizens at a wider level too. And also, I think the other sort of aspect which I look at around AI is also allowing facts and information to be readily accessible to everyone. And that includes, for example, the clerk. We had a one where they had to look up, the clerk had to look up a precedence which only occurred, I think, once in 120 years. And you want that to be at the fingertips, whilst we're actually debating within Parliament as well. So how can you quickly find information, again, assuming that you've got good quality data as well. And there are various strategies when you look at unstructured data and structured data and a whole range of other things. But it's about saying that if you have all this information there, how do you actually surface that in a real sort of meaningful way, I think is really important. So I think I'm not sure about my timing, Louis, but I think I've probably gone maybe over a little bit 10 minutes. So my apologies if I have. So
thank you so much for your very insightful presentation. Ludovic, the floor is yours if you want to make any comments for 5 minutes, more or less. Feel free to use the floor.
Based on what Jonathan mentioned, I can only agree with what was said and all the elements introduced. I will just focus on three rapid points. I will give you a quote from George Orwell in 1984. It was one of the movies that was in the past. And one of his quotes is, "Who control the past, control the future. Who controls the present, controls the past."
Yeah.
So I give you a couple of seconds to think about it, but put that in perspective with an archiving activity. So it means that the one who are controlling the present will have a capacity to influence the past, and the one who controls the past will control the future. So providing a fair, accountable, and transparent access to archives is one of the foundation from democratic continuity. Yep. In such a way that, and we can see that in other places in the world currently, our work is to protect from reinterpreting history in ways which are incorrect towards facts that has been established. And this is really something we were extremely attached to for this preservation of democratic continuity. Another point that was quite interesting in what was mentioned is the importance of multilingualism. And it's completely true. One of the first domain in which AI is used extensively is multilingualism. Because when you have a document or when you have an information available in a language that you do not understand, but you still think there's something to be learned from, then how to get an access to this one? I remember when I was a young researcher at the CNRS in France, and teacher at the university, I knew that there were some documents published in Oriental or Eastern Oriental part of Europe, but I could not access them because I was not speaking Bulgarian or I was not speaking Romanian. But when I was making conferences in Bulgaria, for instance, I knew that they were working on the same topics as mine, but I was not able to understand what they were working on. So multilingualism is really a domain on which AI is a huge opportunity. We didn't demonstrate it, but the approach we took for one of these dimensions, which is only for the translation, automatic translation of text, is that we rely on the browsers. In the case that we did, you see that we provide documents in all the available languages, but it's not that because a document is available in German and you would like to have it available in Hebrew or in Arab or in Indian, that you may not have an access to this one in your language. And what we do is that we extract the content, we use it as a text. And when you have a content text HTML in a language that is not recognized by your browser, automatically, based on your regional settings or your own settings, it will propose the opportunity to translate in another language. This means that we did not invest it a lot. Well, we did not invest it at all in applying AI technologies on our content and documents, because the only thing we had to do is to say, okay, we have a sufficient trust in the algorithm which are used to perform automatic translation. So let's not focus on this one. It's by design in the tool which is used to disseminate. So there's no need to invest in that. And why do we have a sufficient trust? Which were the documents that were used by these systems to work on multilingualism and automatic translation? The ones which are most spread in the world, for instance, the Bible, quite easy, or EU documents. And why EU documents? Because we have so many languages, and we ensure that with linguist lawyers, we work to have a permanent and correct alignment in between all languages, that you can train systems based on all the documents produced in the context of the EU legislation or EU institutions. So for us, it's extremely easy. Why do we have a chance to have a huge quality of automatic translation from all text? Simply because the algorithms were trained with all documents. Full stop. So no need to go further. So, but it's completely true that multilingualism is a huge place for improvement and use of AI, whether it is the translation of captions and all these situations, extremely useful. And the last one, and this is a point that was mentioned on the second slide, which is about non-digital citizens. And this is also a very important point. We are thinking about new ways of exploring content, data, or documents, but at the same time, we also have to make sure that this one are accessible by the largest number of people. Not everybody can be experts in technologies, or not everybody can be expert in user experiences. My mother, which is a little bit more old than me, not that much, is still in difficulty when they have to use a telephone and to change from an app to another one. So imagine performing a search in a huge data set of documents is something that is not really in her capacity, even if she would be interested in it. So how do we try to cope with this fact that, yes, there is a digital fracture in our societies, with people having an access and knowledge to manipulate these documents, and those who do not have? I don't have the answer for that. It's a permanent work to be done. It's about education mainly, and it takes time. But if we want to ensure transparency, accountability, and fairness, we necessarily need to address the case of non-digital citizen, and that's really a main fact to be challenged. Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that and share your closing remarks as well.
Yeah, I think very good remarks there, Ludovic. You know, as I said, it's an interesting one that you know, where you can actually use out-of-the-box information, such as for Google Translate, or you know, the information which is provided within the browser. It's understanding that there is no necessarily cost for that. And, you know, it's a very interesting point that some parliaments are actually looking for, you know, a costed solution for everything, if that makes sense. Whereas there are open source, you know, technologies out there. There are open data sets, and we're a huge advocate, as Louis would know, you know, for open data sets and open parliaments. You know, around standardizations, around certain sort of elements, etc. And I think, the more we can use around open source and open data as well. There's OpenAI and there's a whole range of other things, as well, which we can actually then utilize. I think that's going to also, I would hope that would actually increase the usage and the adoption of AI in Parliament, because it is a far lower entry cost into some of the other larger applications which you can actually purchase.
Jonathan, Ludovic, any final thoughts to close not only this round, but the data governance and technical perspective from artificial intelligence in the legislative?
Yeah, the point is not to consider AI as being something which is extremely difficult and unachievable like it was in the 80s or even before. No, you have a set of bricks. These bricks are algorithms. Algorithms are very often available in open source formats. As I mentioned, we are using Zensin, Spacey, MIT, SumMap from the MIT. So what we are doing is we are using these bricks, and now we are composing solution based on these bricks that we interconnect all together, and they are open source. Then you've got the question of your data sets to be transparent and to explain how you use your data set and why you're using this data set. But it's really something that many people can do, and providing open data on that. We are providing them through dataset info for all the visualization tools, having a common creative license 4.0 attached to this one. So it's really something that is achievable, that the people can do. You just need to spend a little bit of time to understand how to manipulate this algorithm, but you don't need to be an AI expert anymore to do AI. You may be assisted, but you don't need more than that. So I completely agree with all the points introduced by Jonathan. And please do not be afraid of AI. It's a set of bricks that can enable you to build many efficient rules.
Ludovic, before I just close the round and pass to Robin, I have to say that you and Jonathan are just setting the grounds for a future debate with Patricia and the Open Data Hub to discuss the same topic, applying on automatic interpretation on levels of open data from different institutions. Just to give you a spoiler for the future that you're giving us this idea. Now we have closed this first session. I'd like to bring up the second dimension that I first mentioned to you in my opening remarks. The second dimension is user interface and user experience. And I have the pleasure to welcome Robin here to make a brief presentation from the Knesset in Israel. And so we can continue this debate. Robin, please feel free to use the floor. You can use it for 10 minutes. Thank you.
I actually came to this presentation today without a presentation, because I figured I would like to hear what everybody has to say and then be able to react and share what I can share from my experience in the Knesset. My job in the Knesset is the deputy director of the Knesset website. So I'm coming from the place where we take the information that belongs to the archive, or not belongs, or that is, dealt with in the archive, and dealt with in the protocols department, and dealt with in the Knesset minutes department. And our job is basically to get it out to the public in the most user-friendly way. And so, first of all, the AI, the concept of AI doesn't scare me, because artificial intelligence is basically defined as the ability of a machine to mimic human actions or thoughts or actions, or thoughts and actions. So even doing a basic search, or a basic text-free search in a document, Control F inside of a document, that's already a certain form of control of artificial intelligence, because I would scroll through and try to find that word I'm looking for. And instead, the machine is doing it for me much faster and likely much more efficiently with fewer mistakes. So almost anything that is going to improve the user experience in terms of being able to find data or retrieve data in a better way, that to me is already a certain form of artificial intelligence. Now, over the years in the Knesset, we've had very interesting experiences in terms of, and I'm going to go back to something that actually that Fotios said before, which was there's always the I guess a dissonance between those of us in a parliament who know from a professional perspective what we want to get out to the public, and the administration who wants to save money, doesn't think it's so important, and all of that stuff. So over the course of the years, anytime that the Knesset website staff has wanted to make search, okay, a basic free text search across the entire website better for the public, then you had the administration of the Knesset coming and saying, wait a minute, then maybe we should make the search inside of the Knesset be better for everybody, all of the documents and everything, those that are public and those are not. And then what happens is when you make a project too big, it doesn't happen. So in the end of the day, believe it or not, of all things, the search on our site is actually not efficient. Searches in our site within databases is very efficient. And the reason that is, and the reason that is actually very ironic is because in 2012, we had a director general at the time who had a vision. And his vision back in 2012 was, I'm a farmer in the north of Israel, and I need to know all of the history of all of the legislation that has to do with water usage in agriculture. I want to know everything. So I'm going to find, I need a way to go into the Knesset website, type in water legislation, and I get everything. Everything means all the protocols, all of the laws, any other discussions or reports that had to do with water. I can find it within seconds. And well, we haven't gotten there yet. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten there yet. And based on the description of what of Ludovic, of your and what I see from your demonstration today, you have gotten closer to that, or you've gotten to there. And you know, that's something that I very much you know, I very much admire. And on the other hand, I don't know how, you know, we're going to be able to move things inside of our parliament to get to that point in the very near future. Now, however, now I'm going to go back to 2012 and show something else. One of the Jonathan touched on this before. Nowadays, you know what? It's not documents anymore, by the way. It's now all media. And all media, by the way, includes photos. Okay, we haven't known talk about photos, we talked about video. Now, video, of course, you're talking about, let's say, all of the, I will use the word happenings that occur in a parliament, all of the debates, discussions that happen in parliament are now, in a lot of Western parliaments, are now recorded and available on VOD. How, without looking at some kind of a protocol, how will I know where to go find the debate that I want to see on video? Forget about reading, I don't want to read it, I want to see it, okay? So interestingly enough, again, back in 2012, the same director general who happened to find a small company in Israel that was doing something like this, introduced into our website what we call the synchronized protocol. You're talking about the protocols of the debates in the Knesset plenum that basically the final version of this was, it goes up online. You, at the same time that you see the video, you see the text, and the text is underlined as the video continues. And interestingly enough, at the time, we on the website staff were a little bit annoyed at the amount of money that was spent on this technology that kind of seemed very kind of show-offy. Like, what was it adding for anybody? But again, retroactively, we saw that it added two dimensions that we could not have foreseen at the time. And one of them was a free text search in video. That's basically what it did. You know, I do a search, I say dog, okay? I search for the word dog in, and I find, all of a sudden I find 4 places in the, you know, over the last 3 years where the word dog shows up in the debate in the Knesset plenum. And then right away, I'm brought to that place on the video. And that, if you ask me again, that's kind of like before its time. Back in 2012, this existed by us. Okay, so that's kind of like a little bit before its time. We still have this. We also did not foresee how it would be helped for accessibility. That we don't have yet a requirement for live streaming, but we have a requirement that the protocol, or for a protocol, but this is even better than a protocol because it's a synchronized protocol. But besides that, in the end of the day, we didn't even realize that, who knew that the Knesset members themselves, the parliamentary members, needed to be able to find their own quotes in video so that they can chop it down and put it up on their own YouTube channels, okay? Again, we did not foresee that at the time. We did not foresee how important this little, interestingly enough, little AI project, we didn't call it that, anything like that back then, like we still don't, but the point is that there are AI elements to that. So I just wanted to mention that you know, so part of how I see this concept of uses of AI and uses for the public in the end of the day are definitely going to have to include other media besides textual documents. It's, you know, that's where the world is going. Fewer people want to read, more people want to see, people want to hear. So you know, that's one of the comments that I wanted to make. And the other thing I did want to say was, first of all, what all of you said about the translations and live streaming, again, highly useful, especially again when you have a parliament that does not want to spend so much money, bringing in translations for the larger documents. So yes, that sounds like a very good solution that we can look into one day. My curiosity has been very piqued from the automatic summarizations. Okay, one of the problems of accessibility, like we said, for the public, okay, forget not the technical side, but I'm not a lawyer, and I don't speak legalese or lawyer language, and I want to understand a law, and and I don't want to read through the whole law, and maybe I won't understand the sentences that are extracted, but at least I don't have to find, hopefully, the major or the more important sentences, and it would all be provided for me. So I'm very curious actually about the automatic summarization, and I'm also wondering about some kind of automatic simplifying of language. If you already have the text mining abilities to bring up clusters, or to bring up, or to identify those sentences that are the most important, can you also at the same time already simplify the language so that I, as the layman, okay, remember again, we're talking about user experience, the person, again, that same farmer up north that wants to read the document about the water, about water legislation, needs to understand the document. It's not, not enough just to be able to read it or just to have it. It's not, you also want them to be able to understand it without having to go to their neighbor who's the lawyer. And anyway, so that's just some thoughts that I've had as, in reaction to what I've heard up until now. And that's it. And I appreciate, thank you for inviting me to join this conference.
Thank you so much, Robin, for your considerations and your questions. Ludovic, please feel free to share any remarks you have.
Thanks, Luis. So in the cases that we introduce, we are focusing in the European Parliament on our side in written documents. But it's true that we may have at one moment in time behind our mind to address other type of documents, such as podcasts or videos or imaging. And this is true that these one are also searchable information. The only thing that the written one is currently more easy to manage than the one which are on video, photo, and podcast. Even if, as it was also mentioned previously, it's possible to extract what is said or what is heard inside the videos to be able to search into this one. But that's also one dimension we will investigate, not as the first one, I would say, but this is also something we have in mind to extend maybe the opportunity to perform some searches into various type of documents, mainly multimedia documents. Searching into documents as Robin said, means at least that you understand the document. It may be obvious, but when you search for documents and you find these ones, you may be able to access them, to read them, and to understand what's the purpose of the document. So it's something which is quite important. It has also not only to do with what we mentioned before as the differences of let's say the non-digital citizen, but also to be able to understand their content. In our context, what we did is we disseminate documents over certain periods of the Parliament currently, mainly 3 periods, which is the Common Assembly, the Ad hoc Assembly, and the first legislature prior to direct elections. So from 1958 to 59 to 79. So in order for the people to understand, or for the citizens to understand in which context was produced this document, we provide an extensive description of these periods. So we do not provide the information as such. We contextualize the information, or we contextualize the document in the period in which it is included to ease the understanding of this document. And considering the summarization, what we did is to, I would say, more or less choose a more easy path. When you're talking about summarization, you've got the 2 approaches. One is to extract, so summarization by extraction. You extract the more significant sentences from your document, or you've got paraphrasing, meaning that you will try to extract part, or semantic analysis. You will try to extract part of your document and then trying to rephrase it in a way that will introduce new sentences, but that should give the global meaning of the document. And this one is much more complex, and for many reasons that you just introduced about what is this simplified way of writing a new text based on the previous one, and there you can have a lot of bias. And it's true that this one is much more complex. Even so that when you are using some accessibility constraints, it is proposed to use words, for instance, which are less than 3 syllables, and the number of syllables is used to define to which kind of category of the population you can address yourself. So, for instance, if you are talking to children less than 12, it's recommended to use 2 syllables words, and less than 18, 3 syllable words, and less than or for adults less than 4 syllable words. So you have this type of constraints to create your new corpus based on your document. So for the summarization, we took the easiest path, I would say. But this challenge still remains in the huge domain, how to make a synthesis of all the information and to propose it. Searching for atomic information or atomic document is one thing. You can use your search criterion, or you can use your different visual components in order to select a set of documents. You can access them one by one. But if you want to provide an automatic summary of the content of all these document set or data set, this is something which is much more complex. Even more if you want to give an historical perspective, because you have to identify at which date each document were produced and which were in the context of Parliament, which were the legal constraints of the time by which the document was produced, so that it's aligned with the appropriate regulatory framework. So this one is pretty hard. Very interesting, but still pretty hard. When we provided our new tools online for citizens, we had 2 reactions: inside and outside. The reaction we had inside was from the colleagues performing search. Well, if you provide a tool to do search, what will be my job next? Well, in fact, we are performing something like 300 search per year with a human being. So we have colleagues who are performing this search and providing answers to any kind of questions that we receive with an historical perspective, and with an archiving perspective. And the dashboard that we provided has shown to be used on an average with 300 sessions per month. So a session is a continuous time frame of 30 minutes by which our dashboard is used by one person, which is assimilated as one search. So previously, we only answered to emails which were sent to us in order to perform a search, internal or outside the Parliament. And we had 300 questions. We added the dashboard. We still have the 300 questions to manage, but on top, we answer to 300 sessions per month to citizens. So it's not something that replaces. And as you mentioned, this is an unforced, or let's say, it has created a new usage. It's not something that is replacing something that we have. Maybe the easiest questions we received are now answered directly by these automatic tools or dashboard. But then it enables us to focus our limited resources to questions which are much more complex. Questions such as the position of the Parliament towards Korea, for instance, that I use in my presentation, is something which is more complex than asking, please give me the report from this committee, from this session, from this legislature on this specific topic, which is only one document. So this is pretty straightforward, but it enables to keep the human being and all their intelligence to focus on much more complex questions for which we provide a more accurate answer. So we did not replace something. We added a new dimension to perform search and discovery on top of the one that we are still continue to provide. So these are my main reactions to what was mentioned by Robin.
Thank you. That clarified some stuff. I understand the difference as you explain now, and why you would start with the automatic summarization as being an extraction and not a rewriting or rephrasing. That's perfectly understandable. The tool that you showed on your during your presentation back at the beginning, anybody basically can. I am not really a citizen of Europe, but I can take your tool and I can take my English PDF document, upload it, and have it. And based on what I understood, that basically anybody, it's open for the public, so anybody can basically go and use and see it, how it will extract the information. Are you curious? Two things. One is, first of all, that's a great tool, and I'd love to try that. Are you curious? Do you want to know the results, or do you see the results of these extractions so that you can keep making the algorithm better? Are you curious, like all of the uses of this tool? Do you keep, again, artificial intelligence is also that the machine keeps learning from itself. So are you curious that, or do you know, or does it keep learning, or does it get better as more people use the tool? That's one question. And again, I'm asking that question based on the fact, based on my assumed answer, which is I can go ahead and also take a look and try it and play with it also. No, that's really it. So I think I would like to try the tool, and I would like to know if again, further use is going to help you guys make it even better.
Please feel free. If during my 2 minutes, we can go back to the dashboard just to show you inside the dashboard how to access it. And if you find if you take the URL that was written by Luís in the chat, click on the URL. In the middle of the homepage, you've got access so online digital documents. And when you access the dashboard, on the top right, you've got select dashboard. And the first one, which is selected by default, is the one for our documents. But if you select the third one, it will bring you to the archive summarizer. So this one, you can access it online. It's available, and you can test it, and we'll be happy to know what is the result on the document that you sent. Is it improving based on the number of documents that it has to summarize? The answer is no. And why? Because well, two reasons. We don't have set up a system that learns from the summarizations themselves and the quality of the summarization. So we don't have a review system that enables to improve the system itself. It's doable. You can do that in deep learning, but we didn't went that far. So we stabilized a configuration of the unsupervised learning system that we used, And we estimated that currently the satisfaction rate is around 0.7 for the summarization, which is sufficient for us to have something which is meaningful. But we didn't went further in order to implement additional functionalities in the algorithm to learn from the qualification of the result which is provided to people. That's the first thing. The second thing is we do not keep traces of the summarization. And why? Because we don't have issues with personal data management. So we are in the EU. Personal data is a very sensitive case in EU. And in order to also protect ourselves and to make it available to citizens, we do not keep track of any information. We don't know who submitted it. We don't know which document has been sent. As soon it's all the summarization is made in memory of the system, meaning that once you end the process of summarization, all the data are deleted. So we do not have any tracks of the document that were sent. It's made on purpose, again, as I said, because we don't want to have issues on personal data. Moreover, it's clearly stated in the tool itself that this is absolutely not made for classified information or classified document or documents with personal data. We are using AWS services for storing our algorithm through Lambda functions on EC2, and it's an American solution, even if it's hosted in Europe. So while we didn't want it to have any issues on personal data management, we decided to make this choice, not to keep any tracks of any summarization made. And the second one is for cost. It was mentioned before, we've seen cost resources. We didn't push to implement a system that we could improve over the time. If we have feedback at one moment that our system is not that efficient, then we look for another step of improvement to check how the configuration of our system could be retrained. But currently, it's not activities that we foresee.
Thank you, Ludovic. Thank you so much, Robin. Moving forward to our last round and to our last dimension that we're discussing today on citizen engagement, I'd like to welcome Alisson Bruno de Queiroz from the Brazilian Senate House. Alisson, please feel free to use the floor. You have 10 minutes to either make a presentation or to react to what Ludovic and other colleagues just shared. Please feel free to use the floor.
Okay, then. So my name is Alisson Bruno. I work for the Senate of Brazil as the citizenship program coordinator. And I need to confess that I feel like an outsider in this panel. But it was great to learn from you about the horizon we have regarding artificial intelligence. Luís invited me, as he mentioned, to share our work fostering student engagement in the legislative activities. And Luís, thank you again for the opportunity. First of all, I'd like to explain briefly part of our website created in 2012, the Cidadania portal or e-citizenship portal. We have a tool called Legislative Idea, and it's a space where people can make suggestions to create new laws. We have 3 ways to submit an idea. And the first and most common is writing on our website. The second one, deaf people can register video in Brazilian Sign Language. We receive the video, translate it into Portuguese, and make the text available on the page. And after that, other citizens can read and support the idea. And this function was created in 2018. So it's relatively new. And finally, people can call toll-free and tell their idea to an attendant who will transcribe them online. This channel is essential, I think, to give accessibility to people without internet access or who lack digital or educational literacy, the non-digital citizens, as Jonathan mentioned. And every idea approved in our moderation can receive support from other people. Suggestions with 20,000 signatures are delivered to a committee, and there the senators debate it and decide whether they transform the idea into a bill or not. But recently, good news, we started encouraging the senators to adopt ideas, no matter how many signatures they have, because most of them have just a few signatures. And last month, for example, a senator adopted an idea registered through telephone by an 81-year-old man. And it was a very good history, because his suggestion was very simple: turn the medicine expiration date more legible on boxes. It's a simple idea. And so far, we have received 99,000 ideas, which received 10 million signatures. And the senators have debated almost 100 ideas and transformed 35 into bills. But now let's move to the project that fosters student engagement. The legislative workshop is a project we developed to make it possible to create a little parliament in every school and university. And the first version of the project we launched in 2020 was designed for schools. But almost immediately after we launched, some university teachers got interested, and we prepared a version for them. The legislative workshop is an activity in which students learn about politics and legislation, and they practice democracy by developing and discussing their own suggestions to create new laws. And finally, they participate for real when they submit their ideas on the e-citizenship website. And every lesson plan for this workshop is available. We made everything for teachers. We also made a student guide and presentations to facilitate the teacher's job, because we love teachers. It's important to mention that the teacher is able to reproduce this workshop without any help from our team, because every step is described on the guide. But let me explain it in more detail now, especially because there is a difference between the material for schools and colleges. And the first phase is the learning moment. Students from all grades will learn the basics of politics, the three government branches, and lawmaking. And after this explanatory introduction, students from universities, and this is the difference, will learn about laws that rule the field they are studying. And for this, we prepared an extensive list of graduate courses and the laws related to them. And while they learn the legislation about their field, they consider how it could be better and draft their ideas. And on the other hand, this is the difference between the two. Middle and high school students will think about general problems that could be solved with new legislation. And similar, then they formulate their suggestions. And this, writing the idea, is the second phase. The third is to evaluate a colleague's proposal and write a report justifying whether the idea must be a law. In the report, they can also suggest improvements in their colleagues' ideas. And after that, everyone presents their ideas and reports to the whole class. Then they discuss and vote on every suggestion. So you can see that the legislative workshop depicts the senator's job. It's very similar. And in the final phase, the students register their ideas on the citizenship portal. And as I mentioned before, but you couldn't see, it is possible to submit ideas by text, video, or toll-free number. So it's very accessible. And after the workshop, we give certificates to teachers and students, everything online. And now we are promoting this project, especially making contact with the university boards of trustees and some schools as well. Thank you.
just to contextualize to Ludovic, I had a very interesting discussion with Alisson, I think a few months ago, where he shared this initiative where he brought e-citizenship to schools. And after our discussion, Ludovic, I thought, okay, how can we make this new information you're making available in the European Union dashboard available to students, available for citizens to be accustomed to use that platform? For parliamentary information not to be strange to people. So for Parliament to actually be a center of information where people can reach out and, as Robin said, say, okay, I want to search for water legislation. I want to search for a specific issue. So this is the context where we invited Alisson's participation, which I think is very interesting to see how can we use this new tool you're releasing for citizen engagement. So please feel free to share any thoughts you think would be interesting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Luis. We are in fact on a kind of parallel flow as what you just mentioned. Parallel because our starting point is not necessarily the same. In this context, there's part of your presentation which is dealing with the opportunity to propose new laws or new initiatives that could be discussed in the context of the Senate. In Europe, following the Lisbon Treaty, we have one new opportunity that has been introduced, which is called Citizen Initiative. And this Citizen Initiative is the opportunity for 1 million citizens to submit a specific idea or a specific topic to be discussed by the European Commission and then submitted to the institution. So essentially, the Parliament to facilitate this activity of collecting potential new laws to be discussed at the EU level, even if it's widely used, I have to say, but it's not part of the Parliament in all contexts. In EU, it's part of the European Commission. But it's something that is definitively to be investigated. That's absolutely true. Considering the longevity of engagement, there are three main factors for that. The first one is significance. Significance means that if you will be engaged in a system if you see a gain or a loss. So if you think that you can submit a new law or a proposal for a law that could be discussed and is discussed, in fact, by senators or by members, in this context, you say, well, I may gain something. I did something that could impact. And the impact is one of the dimensions of significance. So it has to signify something. The second one is about education. Being able to engage in a vision and to support how to understand, or to understand the context by which you are submitting something. What are you proposing? This is a law, but what is a law? In which domain? And how would you like to transform by proposing something new? So all this is about what are the different jurisdiction to which you are requesting something. You are speaking to a Senate, you are speaking to a Chamber of Deputies, you are speaking to a local entity, a town house. So what is this organization? What is this responsibility? How can you address them? Which kind of issues will they debate with? And if I want to express myself, how can I express myself? Which words can I use? How do I have to synthesize my thoughts to produce sentences that then will enable people to think about it? So all this is related to education. And the last one is trust. You have to trust the institution, that the fact that when you submit your activity, it will be managed carefully and carefully, and then you will have a result which is corresponding to a real activity of the system, and that you will have feedback from this one. So these are the three dimensions to have a longevity engagement. In our context, we are, as you mentioned, focusing on education, and we are working closely with universities. The targets that we have are mainly licensed masters and young researchers. So third year of license, masters, and young researchers, mainly the one preparing their PhD. So these are students who have not necessarily a lot of time to perform intensive research. They need to access systems to have them available where they are. You can imagine in EU that if you want to support a university which is in Romania or in Portugal or in Denmark, you will not have the student to travel throughout Europe to come and visit you so that they can collect information. What you're interested in is, okay, if I want people to be interested in the European integration, then I have to bring them the European integration. I don't have to ask them to come inside the European integration. So I don't have to ask them to come to me. I have to go to them. And this is the nicest thing, one of the nicest things of digital tools. I can go to the people. They don't have to come to me. So what we are doing through our dashboards and all the tools and also the new site that we developed and we produce, which is much more multimedia than the previous one, which is much more oriented to explain the historical purposes of our activities and document that we have, is really focusing on that. We want to provide the students and the lecturers from university with basic row of information that they can select the one that they are interested in, and then they can work with. If you are working on comparative law, you will be interested in a certain type of information. If you are working on the evolution of the institution on climate change, you will be interested in other things. So we provide a basic set of, or basic bunch of data, which is controlled, organized, accessible, and then it's up to all the different practices to get information from these ones and to perform the activities. Imagine that you are a teacher in the Max Planck Institute, and this is a real case that I discussed 2 weeks ago, for a long time, with a teacher from the Max Planck Institute on how they can use this dashboard for the students in an educational context. Imagine that you want your students to make a synthesis on how the health question was addressed during a certain period in the European Parliament. Then you say, okay, this was in the domain of this committee, and please look for the documents, make a summary of the evolution of the position of the European Parliament toward health in this specific time frame. So in this context, you can just give the entry point to the students, and they will go and cross by themselves and check by themselves the documents, get them, perform their work, and just come back with the work to the teacher. And they do not have to spend a lot of times by saying, okay, no, I have to open a lot of books and to check a lot of books, maybe to exchange all the documents in between university libraries. Well, no, I have a data set of information ready to be used. I can go. I have a topic which is given by my lecturer, and then I do my work. I select some of the documents. Maybe not all the students will select the same documents. Some of them will seem to go to the plenary, while some of them will only remain in committees. Some will go to a question raised by citizens or parliamentary question raised by members. So the set used by the students will be based on their own work, and then they will give their own result. And for us, we really think that that's one way to introduce the topic of European integration to citizens. Let's be clear, we will not interest all citizens, and that's not the purpose. But we really want to focus on the one that are active in this field, and citizens are really key stakeholders for that and this approach.
Just a few remarks. I think, as Ludovic said, it's important to go to the students, to go to the schools and where people are, and not just wait. They come to our website. Like we create all the Ludovic with his friend and all the team, they've done a great job. But it's really important, I think, as he said, to go to show them that they can use this tool, that they can use all the effort they've performed, and to be useful because I think the data, the archive, as he said, is not for everyone, but a lot of researchers, a lot of teachers, students, that it's a very useful thing. In our case, because we work with all kind of citizens, almost all kind of citizens, and we are trying to show them that because democracy is for everyone, or it should be. So we are trying to reach everyone, since teenagers until 81-year-old men without internet access. So it's important, in our point of view, to try to reach everyone and to think. We try to think about the non-digital citizens, as Jonathan mentioned, because they are often kept out of reach, and this is a way that we try to make the democracy or the participation more democratic, actually. So thank you so much again.
I can only agree with what was mentioned by Alisson, and I don't think I need to add anything else. It's pretty clear. We need to reinforce any ways to support democratic longevity. That's the way that we can make our society sustainable. Well, everything is done in that way is to be supported.
Thank you so much, Ludovic. Thank you, all of you, for participating in this debate today. We are not time constrained, so I'll ask you to do it in one phrase or in one tweet, very fast. Any final thoughts? Fotios, would you like to start?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. It was really interesting. And kindly note that I'm currently preparing not exactly a survey, but an analysis of different AI approaches in parliaments that will be hopefully part of a wider publication on AI in the public sector. This is to be expected maybe within this year. So all these notions were pretty exciting, and we do understand as professionals that work in this field that all this is subject to change due to the changing of technologies, to the changing maybe of the behavior of the public, or simply because of leadership priorities. So we need to be very agile in this, and maybe this is a message. We need to cooperate closer, and we need to exchange good practices and bad practices, because there is no time to waste, and there's not enough resources to cover all angles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fotios. Jonathan, your last tweet of the day.
Yeah, I think leverage other people's experience, I think, is really the key thing. You know, there's a lot of different parliaments, you know, using AI and in different ways, and, you know, have got good experiences and bad experiences. And I think, you know, build up a community and, you know, get the conversations happening to make your experience a good one.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Robbie, your last tweet.
I want to thank you all again, and thank you everybody for sharing. And you all might be hearing from me because you're offering to help and to give information. Well, you might, I might take you up on that.
Thank you so much, Robin. Alisson, your last tweet.
Yeah, just remembering, I learned today that AI is not just for geeks, but for everyone. And it wasn't for me, but I will think more about it. And especially democracy is for everyone, not just for a few people. And thank you so much again.
Thank you, Alisson. Ludovic, do the honors. You're the last tweet of the day.
Thanks a lot. Let's say AI in the legislative, have a vision, start small, think big, no limit.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure to moderate you today. Have a good day.